This is Bone Chillers to disturb your dreams. Dare to join us? Click subscribe, ring the bell. But remember, we cannot guarantee your safety from the nightmares that await. Prepare to be thrilled, chilled, and filled with a sense of dread you'll find nowhere else. Welcome to the darkness. We've been waiting.
Mother and child. On the outskirts of a small South Carolina town, where Spanish moss draped the ancient cypress trees like veils of time, a group of teenagers gathered, their eyes aglow with the thrill of an adventure. Over a bonfire, they swapped tales of the eerie legend of the Moss Mother, a disfigured woman transformed into a swamp monster by a vengeful witch, doomed to forever wander the swamps with a human child at her side. They laughed it off as superstition, but an inexplicable shiver crawled up their spines as the embers flickered in the darkness. At twilight, they pitched their tents near the shadowy lagoon, the eerie silence punctuated by the chorus of cicadas. As night fell, their light-hearted banter gave way to an unsettling quietude, the dense canopy of moss above seeming to muffle their voices. First to disappear was Darren, the group's self-proclaimed skeptic. He had been sitting on the water's edge, his scoffing laughter still echoing in their ears when he simply vanished, leaving behind ripples in the murky water. Panic seared through the group, but they were far too deep in the swamp to quickly return home. They decided to stay, praying it was merely an elaborate prank. The next morning, their hopes dwindled when Jessica, Darren's sweetheart, also disappeared. A heart-rending scream echoed through the swamp, her face frozen in terror before she was dragged into the depths, her arm reaching out in a futile plea. The water returned to its deceptive stillness, a silence so profound that even the cicadas seemed to hold their breath. With each passing night, one by one, they disappeared, each leaving only ripples as evidence. The horrifying reality dawned upon the remaining three, Jason, Mariah, and Peter. The legend they had dismissed was stalking them in this waterlogged labyrinth. Jason, in his desperate fear, suggested they capture the child of the Moss Mother to barter for their lives, but Mariah, remembering the legend's heart, disagreed. "She's not a monster but a mother, her love for her child the same as ours," she urged. "We must respect her, not fight her." Peter, the peacemaker, agreed with Mariah, and the trio decided to honor the legend, not as a horrifying story, but as a living, breathing entity of the swamp. They gathered around the bonfire, calling out to the Moss Mother in sincere apology, their voices carried away by the swamp breeze. Nothing happened immediately, but that night, they slept without disturbance, the nocturnal symphony of the swamp a gentle lullaby. Days passed in this manner, and hope rekindled within them. However, the memory of their missing friends loomed like the gnarled trees surrounding them. One day, as Mariah sat by the water, a pale hand reached out, depositing a waterlogged diary. It was Jessica's. The pages were smeared, but a story was decipherable, a tale of life in the swamp with the Moss Mother, full of compassion and tranquility. There was no fear in Jessica's words, only understanding and acceptance. Jason, who read the diary over Mariah's shoulder, was moved to tears. Guilt gnawed at him, remorse for considering using the child as a bargaining chip. The trio called out to the Moss Mother again, this time offering a heartfelt promise to honor her and the swamp, to tell her story with the respect it deserved. That night, in the glow of the firelight, they saw her. A silhouette against the Spanish moss, her form hunched, the child close by her side. Her eyes gleamed with an otherworldly light but held no malice, only a silent plea for understanding. In her presence, they felt not fear but awe, the ethereal beauty of the swamp reflected in her. As dawn broke, they found themselves on the outskirts of their town, the moss-draped trees of the swamp a distant shadow. There were no explanations, no memories of how they got there. But in their hearts, they knew they had been granted a reprieve, their promise to the Moss Mother their saving grace. The story of underneath the Spanish moss lived on, but not as a horror tale whispered in hushed tones. Instead, it was a story of respect, understanding, and most importantly, the undeniable love of a mother. After all, every monster has a story, a truth hidden beneath the moss, waiting to be understood. Title: Dear Diary. Sarah Thompson, a petite 12-year-old with raven black hair and crystal blue eyes, was a bright child, her intelligence far surpassing her peers. But she was far from ordinary. Sarah had a disturbing knack for thinking, nay, fantasizing about the end of her family, her parents and her older sister, Emily. The Thompsons dismissed Sarah's brooding demeanor as an adolescence phase. They couldn't see what Sarah hid: Sebastian. Sebastian, a malevolent presence only Sarah could see and hear, was her constant companion. A monster of her making, it preyed on her darkest thoughts, amplifying her resentment towards her family. It drew her deeper into the abyss, encouraging her to outline the demise of her loved ones. Every night, Sarah recorded these dark fantasies in her leather-bound diary, penning it in her neat handwriting under Sebastian's vigilant watch. In the spectral light of her bedside lamp, her eyes glowed with a disturbing delight as she etched her thoughts. As days turned into weeks, Sarah noticed strange occurrences. One by one, her sinister plans began to unfold. The tripwire she imagined to trip Emily resulted in a real-life incident. Emily missed school for 2 weeks due to a broken ankle, having fallen down the stairs under mysterious circumstances. Sarah's heart thumped in her chest as she read the matching entry in her diary. Sebastian had been a figment of her imagination, a coping mechanism, right? Next came her parents. A severe allergic reaction left her mother in the hospital, just like Sarah had once wished. Her father, too, met with an unfortunate accident at work, eerily similar to the one she had outlined in her diary. The horror of her reality began to sink in. Her diary wasn't a safe haven for her thoughts anymore, it was a twisted prediction of the future. As Sarah grappled with the realization, her isolation turned into fear, the joy of her intellect replaced by a creeping dread. She was the architect of her own nightmare, her thoughts dancing on the strings of Sebastian's malevolent wool. She had inadvertently become the monster she feared, her hands stained by her family's suffering. Sarah decided she needed to put an end to it. She needed to confront Sebastian. One stormy night, she sat down with her diary, its pages bearing the weight of her guilt. With trembling hands, she started to write, "Sebastian, it's time for you to go." No sooner had she penned down her words, Sebastian materialized in front of her, his form a terrifying vortex of shadows. "Why, Sarah?" Sebastian asked, his voice a chilling echo. "Aren't they getting what they deserve?" "No," Sarah cried, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not like you, Sebastian. I won't be a monster." But Sebastian laughed, the sound filling the room like shards of ice. "You don't get it, do you, Sarah? I am not the monster here. You are." Sarah froze, her heart pounding. She looked down at her diary, the evidence of her monstrous thoughts staring back at her. She felt a sinking feeling in her stomach, a chilling realization that Sebastian was right. He was just a manifestation of her darkest thoughts, the monster within her. She picked up her pen one last time and wrote, "I free myself from you, Sebastian. I am no monster." As she finished her sentence, Sebastian began to disintegrate, his form dissipating into wisps of shadow. A gut-wrenching scream echoed around her, and then he was gone, leaving only Sarah and her diary. Sarah sat there, the magnitude of her actions crashing down on her. She had allowed her resentment to become a living nightmare. But now she had faced her monster, accepted her guilt, and chosen to let go of her darkness. She picked up her diary and tossed it into the fireplace, watching the flames lick the pages, slowly consuming her monstrous past. It was her first step towards redemption. She hoped it wouldn't be her last. In the end, she was just Sarah, a 12-year-old girl with a bright mind and a wounded heart, who had just slayed the monster within. The mysterious visitor. The Petersons had just begun to settle into their quaint new house, nestled against the ominous fringe of a dense, eerie forest. The isolation was unsettling, but the sounds of the woods, the whispers of the wind through the leaves, lulled them into a false sense of security. All seemed well until the day they spotted him, a lone figure, dressed in a sharp black suit, emerging from the thick woodland. His immaculate attire was starkly out of place in the woodland setting, reminding them oddly of the men in black, those mythic government operatives from sci-fi films. The Petersons, curious and slightly unnerved, watched as he approached their new home with a strange air of authority. Their nerves turned into bewilderment when the man revealed himself to be not a man at all, but an alien from a faraway galaxy. He explained that he was searching for a rare plant that was indigenous to their backyard, a plant called the Spiranthes aestivalis, or summer lady's tresses. The revelation was uncanny, but the Petersons were even more taken aback by the extraterrestrial's humanoid form and his impeccable command of English. With a mixture of fear and fascination, they agreed to assist the alien in his quest. Over the next few days, they watched as he meticulously combed through their yard, taking samples and examining the plant with his strange, metallic devices. But as the days passed, the Petersons' peaceful new home turned into a nightmarish Hell's Cape. Objects started levitating in their house, and eerie whispers filled the once silent nights. Their dreams were plagued by images of monstrous creatures with glowing eyes and sharp, gnarled teeth. The children, Anna and Jacob, started seeing ghastly apparitions in their rooms. The once soothing sounds of the forest morphed into an eerie symphony of unknown horrors. Days turned into nights in this terrifying cycle, yet the alien visitor seemed oblivious to their torment. The Petersons questioned his true motives, wondering if the plant was merely a facade, a pretext to exploit their fear and make them vulnerable to an interstellar experiment. One night, in the height of their desperation, Mr. Peterson confronted the visitor. "What have you done to us?" he demanded, his face pale with terror. The alien, with his oddly comforting voice, assured him that he had nothing to do with the happenings. That very night, the terror reached its peak. A shadowy creature materialized in the living room, its form fluctuating, filling the room with a chilling dread. With a screech that seemed to reverberate through their souls, it lunged at the Petersons. Suddenly, the alien visitor was there, stepping between the family and the apparition. From his pocket, he withdrew a small device. He activated it, releasing a radiant light that seemed to envelope the shadowy beast, causing it to let out a horrifying shriek before it dissipated, leaving behind an eerily silent room. "The forest surrounding your home is a dimensional rift," the alien explained, his expression solemn. "My presence disturbed the balance, awakening the entities that reside within. The Spiranthes aestivalis, it has properties that conceal such rifts. My planet faces the same issue, and I am here to take it back." With that revelation, the Petersons watched as the alien extracted the plant, roots and all, encasing it in a strange metallic container. After expressing his gratitude, the alien visitor turned towards the forest, disappearing into the dense foliage as mysteriously as he had come. From that day, tranquility returned to the Peterson house. The sounds of the forest became lullabies once again, the house remained grounded, and their dreams were free of monstrous apparitions. The Petersons never forgot their mysterious visitor or the harrowing events that had unfolded in their backyard. Despite the terror they had experienced, they found solace in knowing that they had helped an interstellar visitor in his noble quest, restoring the peace in their little slice of the world and, unknowingly, in a far-off corner of the universe. Title: He Said You Have to Die. In the quaint town of Harrowsville, Samuel, a historian, and his family moved into the Drummond estate, a colossal relic of the past. Its ancient walls, adorned with grotesque murals, told stories of the epochs gone by. On the first night, as the rest of the family slept, Samuel roamed the house, tracing his fingers over the twisted faces and tortured figures in the murals. That's when he first saw it, a pulsating shadow, snaking between the painted lines and disappearing into the stone. It was a skin-shedding entity, residing within the walls of their new home. In the following days, the entity started to communicate. Its thoughts surfaced in the form of shifting patterns on the wall. They swirled and twisted, intertwining grotesquely to form horrifying tableaus of the past. Each shedding of its skin revealed a new, grimmer tale of the house's history. Samuel was mesmerized, his sanity slowly being pulled into the depths of the mural's convoluted narratives. The entity whispered prophecies of impending doom, hinting at a grim fate for his family. Samuel, lost in the torrent of chilling premonitions, couldn't bring himself to share his fears. Instead, he locked himself away, his hours consumed by the ever-changing murals, his mind echoing with the whispers of the entity. The once jovial historian turned into a withdrawn shell, his gaze always shifting towards the walls. Meanwhile, his family began to sense the changing atmosphere. The house, once a charming artifact, felt malignant. The painted faces seemed to leer, the patterns warped and darkened, growing increasingly grotesque. Samuel's wife, Clara, and their 2 children, Jane and Thomas, started to feel a chill, a feeling of being watched from every corner of the house. One night, Clara awoke to the sound of Samuel muttering in the study. She found him there, eyes wide and unblinking, staring at the wall. The mural was alive, its grotesque figures writhing and reshaping. His terrified whispers matched the pattern of the walls, predicting a chilling demise for them all. Clara reached out to him, but he recoiled, his gaze never leaving the wall. In the following days, the house seemed to feed off their fear. The walls groaned, the murals twisted into unspeakable horrors. The once bright and cheerful family portraits hung in the hallway contorted into horrifying caricatures. The children refused to sleep, their dreams plagued by the menacing murals. One cold, silent night, Clara found Samuel standing in Jane's room, transfixed by a mural that hadn't been there before. A horrifyingly accurate representation of their family was taking shape, each figure meeting a gruesome end. Clara screamed, pulling Samuel back to reality. But the damage had been done. The prophecy had been written, its gruesome tableau imprinted on their minds. As the sun rose, the house erupted into chaos. The walls started to pulse violently, the murals shedding their skins, their grotesque tales laid bare for all to see. The entity reveled in their horror, its whispering laughter echoing through the corridors. Samuel, driven to the brink of insanity, shouted out an apology, his voice drowned out by the wails of his family, but their realization had come too late. The house was alive, and it was hungry. As the murals swirled, the shadows lengthened, and one by one, the family was pulled into the writhing mass of stone and paint. Samuel was the last to go, his horrified eyes watching his family disappear into the grotesque murals he had so obsessively studied. The Drummond estate fell silent again, its hunger momentarily satisfied. But on its ancient walls, the murals shifted, telling a new gruesome tale, the tragic story of the historian and his family. And in the quiet town of Harrowsville, the house waited for its next inhabitants, its grotesque faces leering in anticipation. Beauty's curse. Catherine O'Connell was the epitome of beauty, her features gracing countless magazine covers. Her striking eyes could convey 1,000 emotions, her perfectly sculpted face inspiring envy and admiration in equal measure. But even among her possessions, one stood out, a luxurious, silver-bordered vanity mirror, a gift from an anonymous admirer. One day, as Catherine admired herself, she noticed something peculiar. Her already stunning features appeared more exquisite, her skin more porcelain, her eyes more mesmerizing. Every time she gazed into the mirror, her beauty seemed to elevate to new, breathtaking levels, transcending humanly boundaries. It wasn't long before people around her noticed. Colleagues grew envious, fans crazed, loved ones concerned. Catherine basked in the attention, but soon, the impact of her unnatural beauty became frightfully clear. A fellow model slipped on the runway, breaking her leg, a photographer lost his sight after a flashbulb explosion, and her manager suffered a sudden stroke. Around the same time, a chilling voice whispered from the mirror, "Beautiful, aren't you, Catherine?" The mirror's surface rippled, revealing the spectral image of a man with scornful eyes. "You look so much like her, the woman who betrayed me. I've waited centuries to have my revenge." Terrified, Catherine understood that she'd fallen victim to a curse, her beauty turned into a weapon against those around her. She sought help from spiritualists, scholars, even paranormal experts, but to no avail. Every proposed solution only fueled the vengeful spirit's rage, resulting in even more disasters. Time was running out. Catherine's loved ones were falling victim to her lethal beauty. One evening, she watched in horror as her sister collapsed, clutching her heart, after admiring Catherine's inhuman beauty. A chilling realization seized Catherine. She had to fight the spirit and break the curse herself, or she would cause more harm. Battling her fear, Catherine approached the mirror, her supernatural beauty reflecting back at her. "I'm not the woman who betrayed you," she said, her voice firm. "Punishing me won't bring you peace." The spirit sneered, "Your beauty was her gift, and it shall be your curse. Everyone you love will suffer." "I reject your curse," Catherine replied. Her love for those around her, her remorse for the havoc she'd wreaked, filled her with determination. "You've suffered, yes. I'm sorry for that. But repeating the cycle of pain isn't the answer." Her words echoed in the silence. Then, to her surprise, the spirit didn't retaliate but appeared contemplative. "What do you propose then?" it asked, its voice less venomous. "The woman who betrayed you, she's long gone. Your revenge won't reach her. But perhaps," Catherine hesitated, "perhaps, I can help you find peace, help you move on." "And why would you do that?" "Because," Catherine answered, "I've seen what bitterness does. I've seen it in your eyes, and I've seen it in those hurt because of me." The spirit was silent for a moment. Then, a weak, sorrowful voice echoed, "Very well." In the following days, Catherine worked with historians, paranormal researchers, and the spirit himself to uncover his story, a tragic tale of love, betrayal, and a death mired in sorrow. Catherine helped reconcile his past, his unfulfilled desires, and gradually, the spirit's bitterness began to fade. With each passing day, Catherine's beauty softened, her eyes losing their otherworldly glow, her skin returning to its natural shade. Those around her stopped falling victim to inexplicable accidents. She knew the curse was lifting. Finally, the day came when the spirit's image appeared for the last time. "I've wronged you, Catherine," he admitted. "I let my pain cloud my judgment. I'm sorry." With that, the mirror shuddered, and the spectral image faded, leaving only Catherine's reflection, still beautiful, but humanly so. The curse was broken, the spirit at peace. Catherine had fought her battle, not with anger or hatred, but with understanding and compassion. Her beauty remained, no longer a weapon but a part of her. It had indeed been a curse, but also her strength, leading to a victory that restored peace, not only to the spirit but also to those she cherished.
Thank you for watching, and remember, the darkness awaits. Until our paths cross again, stay fearful and stay subscribed.